Alders Bend, Colorado, 1882. Owen Hale was on one knee when Clara Whitmore looked past the ring in his hand and found Daniel Marsh standing in the doorway. Half of Alders Bend seemed to be watching. Owen had land, money, a growing horse operation, and the confidence to say what he wanted without circling around it. Daniel had spent 9 years doing the opposite. He stood with his hat gripped in both hands. For 9 years he had mended Clara's fences, helped bring in her wheat when her father broke a leg, sat up through 2 nights of pneumonia, and found every useful reason in the world to be near her. He had never once asked her to stay. Now Owen was asking. "I can give you a good life," he said. "I love you, Clara. Will you marry me?" She looked at the ring again, then at Daniel. This time, he held her gaze. 4 months earlier, he still believed he could go on as they always had. Clara was 30 that summer and ran the Whitmore farm herself. She had inherited it after her father's death and kept one hired hand during the busiest months. Daniel was 35. His land met hers along a narrow creek shaded by cottonwoods, with an old fence marking the line between them. That fence had been giving them reasons to see each other for 9 years. Then, Owen Hale came home to Alders Bend. He had grown up 2 farms south of Clara and left for Wyoming at 23. 8 years later, he returned with good horses, enough money to buy the Bell place, and plans for a large breeding operation. Within 2 weeks, his sorrel was tied at Clara's gate often enough to draw notice. Daniel noticed before anyone else did. Every time he saw that sorrel at Clara's gate, another old moment came back to him. He and Clara had met over the creek fence after a spring flood knocked part of it flat. She was 21 when he showed up with wire and a hammer. Clara told him she could handle the repair herself. "I know," Daniel had said. He stayed anyway. When Clara's father broke his leg, Daniel helped finish the harvest and refused payment. When a hard winter cost Daniel 30 head of cattle, Clara brought over feed before he had to ask. When his mother died, Clara sat beside him until the stove burned low. At one point, Daniel reached for her hand, and she turned her palm up to meet his. A neighbor knocked before either of them found out what might have happened next. 2 years before Owen returned, Daniel came even closer at a harvest dance. Halfway through one song he said, "There's something I ought to tell you." Clara waited. A drunken cattle buyer crashed into a table. Another man shoved him back, and the dance floor dissolved into shouting. Daniel never finished the sentence. Clara had been wondering about it ever since. That summer she had another worry she kept mostly to herself. A hay buyer in Pueblo had failed before paying the balance on a large order. Clara could keep the farm running, but a note on 40 acres of her north pasture would come due in spring. Without another good sale, she might have to give up land she had spent years holding on to. Owen began calling on her regularly. Daniel saw the sorrel at her gate after church. A few days later, it was there again, still tied outside after the lamps came on. He said nothing about it. Instead, he started finding work that Clara had not asked him to do. He repaired the tongue on her wagon. He brought over seed when her order came up short. He spent most of a Saturday resetting a barn door that had opened and closed perfectly well before he touched it. Clara let him work until she had enough. The following Tuesday, she found him beside the creek, driving a new post next to the old fence. Cicadas rattled in the cottonwoods. The water ran low over sun-warmed stones. "You know that post was still good," she said. Daniel kept his eyes on the wood. It leaned, half an inch. Half an inch turns into an inch, only if you give it enough time. The hammer stopped. Clara folded her arms. Some things can turn into 9 years. Daniel looked toward the creek. Owen Hale seemed serious. "Yes, he has a good place. So do I. He's doing well. I know." He struck the post once, harder than he needed to. Clara stepped closer to the fence. "What are you actually trying to say?" Daniel took so long that she almost answered for him. At last he said, "Whoever marries you will be a fortunate man." Clara stared at him. Then she said it. "I had hoped it would be you." The hammer slipped from Daniel's hand and dropped into the grass. Clara had imagined his face in that moment more times than she cared to admit. She had pictured surprise, relief, maybe even a smile. She had never pictured fear. "Clara, don't. I didn't know. You did." Daniel looked down. The embarrassment came hot across her face. "You knew." "I suspected." "How long?" He did not answer. "How long, Daniel?" "Since the dance." 2 years. Clara stepped back. "You let me spend 2 years thinking I had imagined the whole thing. I was trying not to ruin what we had. By pretending it was nothing? I thought if I was wrong, you weren't. I know that now." Daniel came around the end of the fence. Clara lifted one hand. "Stay there." He stopped. Some of the posts along that line had been set by Daniel, others by Clara. After 9 years of repairs, neither of them could have said which belonged to whom. "I was afraid of losing you," Daniel said. "So was I." He glanced toward his house across the creek. "My father died when I was 19. My brother went west and never came back. Then my mother. I know what happened to your family." Daniel stopped talking. Clara's voice stayed level. "I was there. I know. You remember I was there. That isn't quite the same." Daniel swallowed. "I had more to lose." He knew it was wrong as soon as he heard himself say it. Clara's face changed. "No," she said. "You only believed your fear mattered more." Daniel opened his mouth, but whatever answer he had was not worth hearing. Clara turned for home. They did not speak for 3 weeks. Daniel saw her twice in town and kept his distance because she had asked him to. It bothered him that he could honor her request for distance now, after spending years avoiding the one thing she had needed him to say. Do you think Clara was right to walk away after Daniel stayed silent for 9 years? Tell me in the comments. And if stories like this are your kind of thing, subscribe to Dusty Mercy. Owen kept calling, and Owen made it difficult to dismiss him. He learned Clara's work hours. If he brought coffee, he left it where she could reach it and did not expect her to stop working for him. When a part on her thresher cracked, he found a machinist in Denver and got a price before Clara finished drafting her own inquiry. When the failed hay contract came up, Owen did not offer to pay the note. "What did the bank say?" he asked. Clara told him. "How much does the North Pasture give you in a decent year?" She told him that too. He asked whether she had tried buyers farther east. Before long, Clara had the ledger open on the table between them. Owen listened without treating the farm as something a husband would one day take over. Daniel heard about the Pueblo failure from Amos Carter. Amos was 60, widowed, and had known Daniel long enough to have little patience left for his habits. "You knew about Clara's note?" Daniel asked. "Most of the valley knows the Pueblo buyer went under. Why didn't she tell me?" Amos looked at him over the harness he was repairing. Daniel rubbed his face. "Right, at the harvest fair in September, Owen entered one of Clara's mares in the judging without telling her. The mare took second place. Clara found him by the pens afterward. You entered my horse." "I did." "You might have asked." "I should have." She had been ready for an argument. The apology left her with nowhere to put it. Owen nodded toward the ribbon. "You do good work, Clara. You could stand to let people notice once in a while." Daniel heard him from a few yards away. What bothered him most was that Owen was right. That evening, Clara danced with Owen twice. Daniel stayed against the wall until Amos wandered over with 2 cups. "One of those mine?" Daniel asked. "No." Amos drank from the first. "Both mine." Daniel kept watching the dance floor. Amos followed his gaze. "You planning to speak to her?" She asked for distance. "She asked you to stay on your side of a fence 3 weeks ago." "I doubt she meant until Judgment Day." Daniel looked at him. "If she chooses Hale, she chooses Hale," Amos said. "That part is hers." "I know." "Then give her an honest choice." Daniel said nothing. Amos finally handed over the second cup. "I'm 60 years old. I do not have another 9 years to watch this." Daniel left before the last song. Clara noticed. Owen noticed her noticing. He was decent enough to let it pass. A week later, he brought Clara a silver brooch from Denver. She opened the small box at her kitchen table. "Owen, this is too much." "It's a brooch. You know what I mean." "Yes." He pulled out the chair across from her but did not sit. "I'm going to ask you to marry me." Clara's fingers went still on the box. "Tonight?" "No." "Then why tell me?" "Because you should know it's coming." Clara looked down at the brooch. Daniel had never given her that kind of warning. Owen glanced toward the window. Daniel's barn roof was visible beyond the creek. "You've waited long enough for a man who calls silence honor." Clara looked up. "He is my neighbor. He's a coward." "That may be true." Owen blinked. "But you don't get to say it." After a moment, he nodded. "You're right. I'm sorry." He left the brooch and went home. Clara already knew Daniel had been a coward. So did he. The next morning, Daniel found Amos outside the livery working oil into a harness strap. "I need advice." Amos looked up. "That sounds dangerous. What do I say to her?" "The truth would be a change." "I tried that." "No. You explained why you were scared." "That's not the same thing." Daniel sat on an overturned bucket. "What if she chooses him? Then you let her." Amos bent back over the strap. A few seconds passed. "But do not stand there afterward telling yourself you were noble because you never asked." Daniel went home and wrote Clara a letter. The first version ran 3 pages. He tore it up. The second fit on one. He folded it and put it in his coat. He still did not take it to her. October brought the autumn social. Lanterns hung from the cottonwoods outside the hall. The tables had been pushed back for dancing, and children ran between the wagons. Daniel almost stayed home. Amos stood in his doorway until he put on a clean shirt. By the time Daniel reached the hall, Owen and Clara were dancing. He watched one song, then a second. Near the end of the evening, Owen led Clara outside. People began turning toward the open doors. Alder's Bend was too small for a man to reach into his coat for a ring unnoticed. Daniel stood just inside the doorway. Owen took Clara's hand. "I can give you a good life," he said. Clara met his eyes. "I know the farm matters to you. I'm not asking you to give it up. We keep both places. We join what helps us and leave the rest alone." That mattered because he had listened when she talked. "I love you, Clara. Will you marry me?" Owen went down on one knee. The hall behind them fell quiet. Clara looked at the ring. There was a great deal to say yes to. Owen was honest, respected her work, and had never needed her to be helpless so he could feel useful. Life with him could ease the pressure on the north pasture. And Clara liked him. That was the hard part. Clara looked toward the doorway. Daniel stood there, hat in both hands, watching her. He did not look away. She turned back to Owen. "I can't." His face tightened. "Because of him?" Clara took a breath. "No." Owen glanced toward Daniel anyway. Clara squeezed his hand once before letting it go. "I've tried to picture the life you're offering. And I could live it." Owen waited. "But that's not enough. I would be marrying you because it makes sense, and then asking myself to become happy about it afterward. You deserve better than that." The hurt showed before Owen got it under control. He stood and closed the ring box. "You may regret this. I already regret enough." Owen gave a small nod and walked past Daniel without speaking. Nobody inside the hall seemed sure where to look. Clara spared them the trouble and went home. Daniel stayed where he was. The next morning he waited beside the creek. Clara saw him near the fence and kept walking until they stood a few feet apart. "If you came to thank me for refusing Owen, go home." "I didn't." "Good." Daniel took the folded letter from his coat. "I wrote this before last night." Clara looked at it but did not reach for it. "What does it say?" "What I should have told you years ago." "Then tell me now." Daniel lowered the letter. "I loved you the first spring we fixed this fence. I knew it when my mother died. I knew it at the dance. I knew it every time I found some excuse to come over and mend something that wasn't broken." Clara waited. "I kept thinking there would be a way to say it without putting what we had at risk. There wasn't." No, the creek moved over the stones behind them. Daniel looked down at the paper in his hand. "I told myself I wasn't asking anything of you if I stayed quiet, but I was. I was asking you to keep waiting while I promised you nothing." Clara's eyes filled, but she did not step toward him. "That's closer. I'm sorry." He laid the letter on the fence rail. "You don't owe me an answer today. What do you want from me?" Daniel nearly said nothing. He caught himself. "I want you to decide without me crowding the decision." That almost brought a smile to her face. "Read it if you want. Burn it if you don't. I won't ask what you did with it." He stepped away and went home. The letter stayed on the fence for 10 minutes. Clara came back for it. She did not forgive Daniel that morning, and Daniel did not act as though an apology had earned him forgiveness. Over the next month, Daniel began catching himself before he reached for a tool on Clara's place. When her wagon began pulling left, he nodded toward the wheel. "Want me to look at that?" Clara said yes. When Clara told him the bank had requested new figures on the North Pasture note, he did not arrive with cash or a plan of his own. "If you want another pair of eyes on the ledger," he said, "I can look." Clara let him. She wanted to know whether Daniel could sit beside one of her problems without taking it over. By then, Clara had found a buyer willing to take the winter hay, but only if she could make up a larger shipment. Daniel had hay from his irrigated lower field that he could spare, and his share of the sale would cover the feed grain he needed for the younger cattle. Clara put both sets of numbers on the table. "If I add what you can spare to mine, he takes the full load." Daniel followed the figures with one finger. "Your share pays the pasture note, and yours buys the grain for the younger stock." He checked it again. "Yes," Clara waited. Daniel finally looked up. "What?" "I'm waiting for you to tell me what I should do." He leaned back in the chair. "Looks to me like you already know." Clara looked down at the ledger. "If we do this, we write it down." "Shares? Yes, labor? Yes, who owns what? Especially that." They spent 2 hours arguing over figures. Clara changed 3 of Daniel's numbers. Daniel changed one of hers. When they were done, both signed the agreement. The buyer took the shipment. Clara paid the pasture note months early, and Daniel bought the grain he needed for the younger stock. Clara had found the buyer and worked out the arrangement. Daniel did what she asked of him and resisted the old urge to take charge of the rest. The letter remained unopened on Clara's kitchen table for 11 days. On the 12th, she read it. There was no grand speech inside. Daniel had written down the dates he remembered: the spring flood, the night his mother died, the harvest dance, the morning Clara's fever broke. At the bottom, he had added one line about what came next. "If you choose a life without me, I will not punish you for being braver than I was." Clara folded the letter and placed it beside the ledger. By November, the valley was waiting for its first heavy snow. Clara needed one last trip into Alder's Bend for lamp oil and medicine for her hired hand's cough. The sky was clear when she left. She stopped at Daniel's gate on the way out. "I should be back before dark." Daniel looked west, where clouds were beginning to gather along the ridge. "Storm coming. Mr. Bell says after midnight. Mr. Bell predicts weather with his knees. His knees have been right twice this month." Daniel smiled. "Which way are you coming back?" "The quarry road if the creek crossing is high." He nodded. There was no warning in the question and no order hidden inside it. Clara noticed that. Then she drove on toward town. Clara finished her errands and started home while the sky was still open. The first flakes began after she was already on the quarry road, miles from town. At first the snow was light enough that she could still follow the wagon ruts. Then the weather closed in far sooner than Mr. Bell had predicted. By late afternoon, the ridge had disappeared, and snow was filling the ruts almost as quickly as they formed. Darkness reached Daniel's place before Clara did. He gave her another 20 minutes. Then he saddled his horse. Amos saw him near the road. "Quarry Road," Daniel said. "How do you know?" "She told me." Daniel rode out. He followed fence lines and cottonwood breaks where the road disappeared under the snow. Twice he lost the wagon tracks and had to circle back. Near the old quarry, he found Clara's horse loose beside a drift, reins dragging, sides heaving. The buggy lay 50 yards farther on, tipped into a shallow ditch. "Clara, I'm here." Her voice came from beneath the wagon. Daniel slid from the saddle and dropped beside her. One side rail had pinned her lower leg against the frozen ground. "I'm all right," she said through clenched teeth. "You're under a wagon, I noticed." Relief almost made him laugh. He leaned closer. "Can you feel your foot?" "Yes, move your toes." She did. "Any worse?" "No." Daniel cleared packed snow away from the frame and reached for the jack. "I'm going to lift the rail. If the pain changes, tell me." Clara watched him position the jack. "You're asking." "I'm trying." "Good. Lift it." The jack slipped on the first attempt and drove Daniel's hand against the frozen ground. Blood darkened 2 fingernails. He reset it. The second time, the rail rose enough for Clara to drag her leg free. She tried to stand and nearly went down. The nearest line cabin was 3 miles away. Daniel wrapped Clara in his coat, helped her onto his horse, and walked beside them through the snow. The cabin had 1 cot, a rusted stove, and just enough wood for the night. Daniel got a fire going and checked Clara's ankle. It was badly swollen, but she could move her toes and there was no obvious break. She lay under 2 blankets while Daniel sat beside the stove in a wet shirt. "Come closer," Clara said. "I'm fine. You're shaking. I've shaken before." Daniel, he moved the chair next to the cot. For a while, they listened to wind pushing snow against the walls. Clara saw the blood around his fingernails. "You hurt your hand. It'll heal." "You always say that." "Usually does." She looked at the stove. "When I told you I hoped it would be you, I thought you might look happy." "I was happy. You looked terrified." "I was that too." Clara turned toward him. "You spend a great deal of time preparing for things to end." Daniel gave a tired nod. "I came through that storm expecting to find your wagon empty." His voice roughened. "I spent 9 years thinking that if I never asked for you, I could never lose you." That sounded sensible right up until tonight. Clara put one hand out from beneath the blanket. Daniel looked at it. Then he took it. "Why did you come?" she asked. "You told me which road." "That isn't what I'm asking." "I know." His thumb moved once across her knuckles. "I came because I love you. If you had married Owen yesterday, I still would have come. I'd have hated every mile of it, but I would have come." Clara studied his face. "That may be the first sensible thing you've said about loving me. I'm improving." Slowly, painfully, she pulled him closer. Their first kiss happened beside a rusted stove while snow covered the quarry road. Daniel knocked his knee against the chair. Clara laughed against his mouth. He did too. The second kiss went better. By morning, the storm had passed. Daniel got Clara home shortly after sunrise. Part of the north barn roof had collapsed under the weight of the snow, and fallen cottonwoods blocked the road she used for hauling hay. Daniel looked at the roof. "I can start up there." Clara gave him a look. He caught himself. "Would you like me to start up there?" "Yes now?" "Yes, Daniel." He went for the ladder. The kiss did not fix everything. Daniel still went quiet when he feared saying the wrong thing, and Clara had 9 years of practice guessing what his silence meant. Their first real argument came over a sick calf. Daniel arrived, saw the animal down, and began giving instructions before he had taken off his coat. Clara handed him the medicine bottle. "If you're planning to run my farm, you should at least know where I keep this." Daniel stopped. "I was trying to help. You were taking over before you asked whether I needed help." He drew breath to argue, then let it out. "Do you need me?" "Yes." "How?" Clara passed him the bottle. Owen returned the silver brooch in January. He did not ask Clara to reconsider. "I bought it for a future that isn't happening," he said. "I'd rather you not wear it out of guilt." Clara turned the little box in her hands. "I'm sorry." "I know." He put on his hat. "I'll survive." She believed him. By spring, Daniel and Clara had stopped pretending they were only neighbors. They still owned separate farms and kept separate ledgers, but they ate supper together often. Daniel got better at saying when he was worried. Clara got better at asking what he meant instead of filling in the answer. One evening beside her stove, Daniel said, "I can't promise I'll stop being afraid of losing you." "I'm not asking you to." "What are you asking?" Clara held his gaze. "That you choose me while you are afraid." He understood. That spring, working the 2 farms together created a practical nuisance. The only wagon gate in the boundary fence stood near the county road, while the safest shallow ford across the creek lay beside the stretch Clara and Daniel had spent 9 years repairing. Moving tools, seed, feed sacks, or livestock from one farm to the other meant making a needless loop instead of crossing there. One morning, Clara stopped the team beside the creek and looked at the detour. "This is foolish." Daniel looked at the fence. "I can move the gate." Clara raised an eyebrow. He smiled despite himself. "Would you like me to move the gate?" "Yes, where?" She pointed to the stretch they had spent 9 years repairing. Here, Daniel handed her the fencing pliers. Clara pulled the first staple. They worked side by side most of the day, taking down wire, setting 2 posts, and hanging a gate wide enough for a loaded wagon. When the hinges were pinned, Clara swung it open. Beyond the gate, the shallow ford gave a wagon a direct crossing from one farm to the other. Daniel rested his hands on the top rail. I spent 9 years fixing this line without asking what you wanted from it. Clara rested one hand on the open gate. And now? This time, I asked. That's an improvement. A slow one. Painfully slow. Daniel smiled. Then, he reached inside his coat and brought out a small wooden box. Clara's hand went still. Inside was his mother's ring. Daniel kept the box open in his hand. I love you, he said. I want supper when I'm late and arguments when my numbers are wrong. I want to know when you need me and when you don't. I want the days when nothing worth telling anybody happens. Clara's eyes filled. I'm not promising easy. I know. He went down on one knee beside the gate they had built together. Clara Whitmore, will you marry me? She let him wait. After 9 years, a few seconds seemed fair. You took long enough. Daniel laughed. Is that a yes? Yes, they married in June of 1883. Clara kept the Whitmore farm in her name. Daniel kept his. They ran the 2 places as partners, argued about cattle, seed, drainage, gates, and once about a wagon neither of them needed. They also kept one rule. If they were angry, they stayed long enough to finish the conversation. Years later, their daughter asked why several old fence posts still stood beside the creek even though the wire between them was gone. Clara looked across the field at Daniel. Gray had begun to show at his temples, and he was repairing a gate that, for once, actually needed repair. They used to show where his land ended and mine began, Clara said. The girl studied the open fields. What did they show now? Clara smiled. Where we finally stopped waiting. Would you have waited 9 years for Daniel after Owen offered Clara certainty? Tell me below. Subscribe to Dusty Mercy for a new Western story every week.